Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people have done to me.
C says Heaven's Gate away team.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with another edition of Kenzie's Krimes, a deep dive into a local murder, mystery, drama, and myself in case do not know what Kenzie's bringing to the table. We're all just like you around the campfire listening to a story that Kenzie's about to tell.
Wardella Winchester was a 56-year-old home economics teacher at Carver Military Academy. She was kind-hearted and helpful. She had actually fixed like pants and clothing of other teachers because she's home at like sewed them up when they ruined them at school. She helped supply the science teacher with a bunch of like various ingredients. You know, the science teachers, like we need salt and stuff. She's home economics. She had their back, all right? And she was honestly so tender-hearted that there was a kid in her family, and I don't know how she was related to him, but she ended up adopting him and raising him as her son. His name was Larry Holcomb.
Okay, before you continue, when you say military school, I have to ask Case this because I don't think this happened to you. But did your parents, when you were screwing up, ever threaten you? They would send you to, quote, military school. And I didn't know what that meant as a kid. I didn't know there was a bunch of military schools around. But that's what I was threatened with when I was screwing up. Also, my dad added, I have 4 sons. I can let one go.
Okay.
Which me being, I'd be the one let go and there'd be 3.
Therapy hour with Brian, I say.
I'm not trying to derail Kenzie's Krimes. I'm just saying the military school thing really triggered me right now. First off, we didn't have the money to send anybody to military school. I didn't know where one was.
You know, I never got threatened with that, but I know what they are. But now that I think about it, you never drive by a military school. Think about all the schools you drive by.
Yeah.
There's a bunch in your neighborhood. I never drive by a military school.
I don't know where they are. They exist.
Have you guys ever watched The Program on Netflix?
No.
So The Program is kind of based on, you know, those like correctional schools for kids. I don't know if that's what the military school is. I think it's a little different. But a correctional school, so this is called The Program, Cons, Cults, and Kidnapping. And it was these programs for like kids who, you know, whatever, got caught smoking pot. You sent your kid to the correctional school. And there was so much awful stuff that happened, the abuse that happened to these kids, and they couldn't get out because it was a correctional school. So it's like, oh, you better behave and do exactly what we say, or you're punished worse. These poor kids, there's a whole docuseries on it. It is so effing insane. Like the kind of punishments of like, we're going to burn your eyes. You have to like stand on your finger for like 7 hours in the same position. And if you move, the clock starts over. Like, and somebody would be like, I smoked pot once in 7th grade. Like, this is like, they were tortured for the next like 7 years. It was so insane. And you'd like graduate out, but it was so impossible to graduate out because you could like talk over a teacher and get knocked down 8 demerits. It was wild. It was such a wild, wild thing. So
a lesson for the kids, not the ding dong ditch. Good Lord.
Don't even think about smoking pot once in 7th grade.
I remember those Scared Straight shows.
Oh, on A&E, fantastic.
Yeah,
I love them.
But this was really bad.
Some of those are pretty bad.
This was like not good and not deserved, and these kids were prisoners. So let's get back into it. I don't think that's what was happening with her. She seems like a really nice home economics teacher. Now her son that she adopted and raised, Larry, he was a 21-year-old grown man, and it really seemed like life could be calming down. She had a steady job. She had friends at that job. Her child was kind of ready to fly the coop. I can't even imagine my kids being 21. I'm going to be like in Cabo. And actually, and you know, a teacher, especially at a military academy, I'm sure she really was ready and deserving of a relaxing retirement, which is just around the corner at 56 years old, a couple more years. Despite all the people that felt love for Wardella, at 7 a.m. on March 16th, 2001, she was kidnapped in her own garage.
Wow.
Nobody heard from her for a full day. But on Saturday, so this happened on Friday, so the next day, Saturday, she made several hushed phone calls from the trunk of a car on her cellular phone, which the captors didn't realize she had. She called family members, she called 911, and she talked to police for about 15 minutes in the trunk of the car. She said 6 men had kidnapped her, stuffing her in the trunk. She said she thought they had driven her about 20 minutes before stopping, and she thought the car had been parked in a garage. She was able to describe all of that. The FBI tracked the phone call to near 87th and Halstead Streets, but couldn't pinpoint it more closely. She was actually being kept in a garage of the 9700 block of South Prairie Avenue, about 3 miles from where the FBI had pinpointed her location.
Oh.
I'm going to stop right there because the next thing they do while they're looking for her is interview her son. And when I tell you this stops becoming a mystery and starts just becoming a crime spree, it is insane.
All right, when we come back in 3 minutes, the conclusion to Kenzie's Crimes today with Brian and Kenzie on Q101.
Brian and Kenzie.
On Q101.
It's Brian and Kenzie on Q101 with the conclusion of Kenzie's Crimes. Again, just like Kenzie always does, leaves us with some kind of cliffhanger.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so I'm going to get right into it because this story, just get ready. This is the most on the edge of my seat I've ever been reading, I think, in my life. So Wardella Winchester was a 56-year-old home economics teacher at Carver Military Academy on her way to school 7 a.m. March 16, 2001. She was kidnapped. However, even though she was kidnapped and duct taped in the trunk of a car, she was able to make several hushed phone calls, one being to police, and she talked to them for about 15 minutes and gave them details. The FBI tracked the phone call and ended up being within 3 miles of where she was. They figured they were racing against the clock, and they started interviewing relatives and canvassing that neighborhood. They decided, let's talk to her adopted son, Larry. This is where the mystery ended and the real crime truly starts. Larry told police on January 25th, now mind you, this crime is happening in March, okay? He and at least 2 accomplices had stolen $750,000 and 40 kilos of cocaine from a drug dealer named Charles Washington Jr. That drug dealer is 37 years old. They also, which I don't even understand the sentence, mistakenly broke into another apartment and stole $15 on their way out. That one gets me. First one, wow. Second one, weird. Now listen, unfortunately, as big as this finding was, it was already too late for Wardella. Saturday, March 17th, the day after she was kidnapped, she was killed. She was driven about a half hour away to a shopping center in Highland, Indiana. She was tossed into a dumpster marked for cardboard only and shot in the head. Her body was found 5 days after she was initially kidnapped on the conveyor belt of an East Hazel Crest recycling plant. Police decided to interview Diana Winchester, Wardella's stepdaughter, who had been staying in Alabama. She had apparently worked with the drug dealer Charles Washington in the past and had tipped off her stepbrother Larry about the enormous stash. Diana Winchester was now believed to be the key player in Wardella's kidnapping and murder. At just 19 years old, Diana and her stepmom weren't close. However, Diana was conceived 20 years prior to this event during an affair Wardella's husband had with Diana's mom. So this baby happened during the marriage, and Wardella was like, I'm not basically addressing this in my life.
It's a Dave Grohl situation.
Well, kind of. Yes to the cheating. I'm mad at Dave Grohl, but I'm not going to put him in this exactly. So 4 people were charged with aggravated kidnapping and first-degree murder, and they were offered no bond, which I think is smart. 3 of them, Brandon Cordell, 23, Mark Perdue, 35, and Diana Winchester, 19, made videotape statements outlining their roles in Wardella Winchester's death. But Charles Washington Jr., that's the big drug dealer that he was stolen from, said that he did nothing wrong and that he was a legitimate businessman who runs a property management company. So he completely denied all of this. Additional charges were then filed against other people, including the triggerman, a 50-year-old paroled murderer who had been in and out of prison since 1977, and his name has not been released. But he was the one who allegedly pulled the trigger on Wardella Winchester. Now, that man said Diana Winchester actually started this entire tangled plot, her own stepdaughter, as if that woman hadn't done enough to her. Okay. Diana Winchester learned about Charles Washington's drugs and money while working for them. She then told her stepbrother Larry, which led to the robbery. Sources said Diana was paid $30,000 for her tip, but she owed him $15,000, so she only ended up with $15,000, which pissed her off apparently.
For the amount of that take, yeah, she needed a bigger taste. She gave them the job.
Well, but they had to go do it.
Right. I want $100K.
Okay.
If I'm doing that.
That's very nice of you. Very humble.
That's a standard rate. Go on the streets.
Okay, I'll go on the streets.
Talk to some people.
So obviously no surprise at all that drug dealer Charles Washington went looking for his money after he was robbed. Now, in an interview, Diana Winchester's mother, Diane Dennis, said her daughter at one point said her life was being threatened and her mom quickly took her to the airport to stay with family in Alabama. So that's why she was there. So about that same time, Diana goes to Alabama, where Wardella Winchester found out about all the money that her son had stolen. She found out her son was involved in this robbery. Now, she decided she was also going to drop the same family member, drop him off to have him go stay in Alabama. She then also helped set up bank accounts and a safe deposit box in Alabama as well as Chicago to hide the money because she was so fearful for her son's life. On March 15th, Charles Washington talked to Diana Winchester, so the drug dealer called the stepdaughter. And she told him that if he wanted his money and drugs, he needs to kidnap Larry's mother.
Whoa.
So she was the one who's like, oh, if you want your money back, hands in the air. That's the person who did it.
Oh.
And this is how you get to him. So it was 100% her.
Evil.
So evil when you were the one who set up the money robbery in the first place.
Yeah.
Horrible. So Diana and Wardella Winchester never spoke, ever. Wardella Winchester never wanted to see or hear from her, with the whole issue. Obviously. And Charles Winchester, her father, died in the car wreck in 1999, and this is now happening in 2001.
Okay.
So keep that in mind. So Charles listened to Diana's advice literally the next day, kidnapped this woman. At one point in time, he did put Wardella on the phone to Larry and said, you need to give him his money back. So after that phone call happens, Charles tells the crew that kidnapped her, because it was a whole crew, you're going to basically pick up this man from Walgreens, do whatever he says. They get in the car, they pick up this man, they drive out to the location. That paroled murderer, whose name has never been released, kills her, and they find her body 5
Without
days
orders
after.
from the drug dealer. He just
said, you do whatever that man says, and boom. So he wasn't even there when she got murdered. They found every single one of them because of this. So this woman literally kidnapped and murdered because of what her stepdaughter did from an extramarital affair, who then contacted the son she had adopted. I feel so awful for her. She did all these good things in her life, and because of really a lot of other people's decisions, ends up kidnapped and murdered.
Kenzie's Krimes.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
This is evil, what those people had done to me.
C says Heaven's Gate away team.
I'm not guilty.
Q101.
Well, there it is. Kenzie's Krimes with Brian and Kenzie on Q101. If you missed any part of it, if you came in at the end, remember it's all on the Brian and Kenzie podcast. You can see the whole thing there, listen to it, I should say, anytime you want, on demand. So coming up here in just about 10 minutes, a little less than that, your chance to go to Bonnaroo, the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. You'll get the whole VIP weekend and $2,000 for travel?
Brian and Kenzie in the morning. And Chicago's alternative all day.
Q101.